Let's start our sermon time with this. Let's start with something that here in this church, we hold this to be true. We hold this to be true at the very heart and depth of our faith. And it's this. We are not only supposed to change the world, but we are made to change the world. We're not just supposed to go out there and change the world, but we are actually made, we are created with the intention and purpose of going out and changing the world. And this somehow, unfortunately, has become kind of a hot take on Christianity. I would get in trouble in saying that in quite a few churches these days. But if you actually look at our tradition, if you look at all the threads that make up the wisdom of Christianity, if you look at all the things that say the way of Jesus, or to put another way, the way of being truly human and alive in the world, those threads would all say that to be human, to follow the way of Jesus, is to be people who go out and transform the world. It's to be people who are working to change all of this back to the way that was always meant to be. This world of justice and peace, this world where everyone has enough and everyone has a place. This world Jesus called the kingdom. This place that is almost like heaven is on earth. This place that is right here, that is right now, but transformed to the way that God has always wanted it to be. And that claim is everywhere in our tradition. If you look at the scriptures, if you look at Jesus, you will see this idea. This is our identity, our purpose, our meaning. It all comes from being people who do justice, who are peacemakers, who do the right and good thing no matter the cost. That is what our faith teaches. And if you look at the walls around us, you will see that justice is one of our core values here at the church, and this is why. It's right there at the very heart of it. But here's the thing. If you begin to take that seriously, if you're like, yes, Nick, I'm with you, I agree, I believe, yes. And then you start doing the work of justice. If you start living out your role as being a part of God's redemptive plan for the universe, and you start looking around at everything going on in the world, the question that you will inevitably begin to ask yourself is, how the heck am I supposed to do that? Right? Anyone ever asked that one before? Yeah, of course, we all have. You could look around at the gajillion of things that are on fire in our world, and you begin to start asking, how the heck am I supposed to do that? And this thing happens to me. I don't know if this happens to you. You can tell me. Where you'll start ping-ponging back and forth between, I know this is important, and I know I have to do this, and like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. Right? Anyone live in this tension? Yeah, I think we all have at some point. That's where we all get stuck. It's there in the overwhelm that we get stuck. But here's the thing that we'll talk about this morning. Because this is a foundational and important idea. We are agents of change. Justice is a core value of us. But I think there is a question that is better than simply, how can I change the world? Which is a good one to ask, but I think there might be a better one out there that is not only slightly less overwhelming, but also might lead to bigger impact. And might do something else too. It might do something that the other question, how can I change the world, can't do. And that's to expand the transformation that we're talking about from just out there to in here as well. Because that's the other part of our faith, right? When we look at our spirituality, what we're talking about is becoming transformed people who go out and transform the world. The bigness of our faith isn't just out there, it's also in here. And it's not just in here, it's also out there. Everything is spiritual, everything counts. And I think there's a question that can help us talk about justice in that big holistic way. And to get to that question, we need to talk about this really old story that is in the Bible. And the story picks up after the whole Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat thing goes down. And if you know that story, you know that way, way back a long time ago, a huge famine hit the world. And it was sweeping across everyone. But thanks to Joe and his coat of many colors, Egypt was able to stockpile all the food and avoid devastation. And because of that, they were able to grow and grow and grow and become more and more powerful until they became an empire. But also at the very same time, they grew and grew and grew in population as all these people started flooding into Egypt, fleeing the food crisis, looking for a home, looking for safety, looking for a place to land. And that included Joseph's people, the Israelites, the people that most of the scriptures that we have are about. They all came and they settled in Egypt. And now fast forward a lot of years, so many years that people forgot about Joseph and his coat. And a new Pharaoh is in charge of the empire. And this Pharaoh, he looks around and he sees all these non-Egyptians living in Egypt, eating all the Egyptian food, taking all the Egyptian jobs, taking up all the Egyptian space. And he sees them growing and growing in number. And even though none of that impacts him whatsoever, and even though statistically them being there is a good thing, he thinks, holy cow, we're going to be replaced. We got to take it back. We got to make Egypt great again. Something must be done. And now if anyone ever tells you that these stories are not relevant anymore, read them this one. And so the Pharaoh, he does what empires do. He turned their fear and their anger into policy, and he enslaved the Israelites. But for this Pharaoh, mass slavery wasn't simply enough. He knew it wasn't going to do the trick. And so the Pharaoh began to stop this great replacement by not only enslaving the Israelites, but also by going after their kids. And he decided, I'm going to kill every baby boy that gets born, and that's going to stop him. That will do it. And now we're going to pull over here for a second. Because this is where the story gets dark and heavy and evil. And this is where we tend to ask a question that we all eventually ask when things either in the Bible or out in the real world get dark, evil, and heavy. And the question is going to be, as the Pharaoh goes to not only enslave, but also kill all the babies, the question is going to be, where is God in all this? Where is God when the children are being killed? Where is God when powerful people go unchecked? Anyone ever asked those questions before? Yeah, that's a response. Yeah, me too. Those are good and very honest questions. And they're questions we should ask. But unfortunately, a lot of Christians have only come up with bad, lazy, or irresponsible answers. Answers like, oh, well, God has a plan. Oh, you just got to have faith. Just trust. Oh, everything happens for a reason. Right? These are the answers we get when we look at evil and darkness and heavy, awful things happening. And we go, where is God in all of this? And people say, well, God has a plan. You just got to trust. And I think the most offensive thing to me about those answers is that they just don't work. Because not only do they not answer our question, they give us a whole new set of very alarming questions that we have to ask. Like, how can I believe in that kind of God? How can I worship a God that's mean and indifferent? How can we respect this all-powerful and good God that doesn't actually do anything? And most of us can't. At this point, most people walk away from faith and spirituality completely because the answers we get aren't only not satisfying, they don't work. And so we walk away. And I don't blame them. I don't believe or buy that kind of God either. But this is where we need to do some work. This is where we need to kind of lean in and do that thing that we're invited to do whenever we're wondering about the kind of God that we have. Whenever the question of God's character comes up, or what God values, or what God does, this is the thing our faith invites us to do. And it's a little woo-woo-y. Are you ready for it? It's look at Jesus. Look at Jesus. Because our tradition says that guy, he doesn't only teach about God, but he embodies God. And so if you ever want to know what God is like, our faith says, look at him. Because he is the embodiment of what God is like. And if we do that, this is what we see. We see that God is love. Not God has love, not God is loving, but this is where it gets woo-woo-y. But God is love. And not only that, but roll with me, God is also spirit. As in the one in whom we live and move and have our being. As in the ground of being, as in the source of life. As in that sacred energy that is here in us and through us and everything else. As in that mystery that resides in you, in me, in us. Which means, and we're going to keep rolling here, that God isn't this character standing somewhere inside this world, but rather that God is a sacred energy and movement and pulse running through this world. It means that God is here in us, with us, and for us, leading and guiding and wooing everything and everyone back into life, back into wholeness, back into love itself. When we look at Jesus, that is who God is. And if that is who God is, if that's who Jesus shows us who God is, then when we ask that question, where is God in all of this? We actually get a much better answer. And it's God's here. It's here. God is here. Because if incarnation teaches us anything, it's that the primary way that God moves in and through the world is people like us. That the place God can be found when everything is heavy and dark and evil is in people. And that is not the answer I want. And I'm pretty sure that's not the answer you want either. Because there are days when I really want an interventionist God just to come and swoop down and take care of some business. I really want that. I really do. And almost every single conversation I have with you guys, you want it too. But we don't get that. We don't get that kind of God. And this is where the leveling up of faith really matters, because it comes with a really tough truth. And that truth says that the act of faith, the core act of faith, isn't like believing hard enough that God will come, that God's going to swoop down. He's got to like really pray and squeeze your hands really tight. It says, don't do that. But it says the act of faith, the real act of faith, the mature act of faith, is actually choosing to believe that God is already here fixing everything. And that is happening, like it or not, in and through people like us. In and through the people who align themselves with life and love and light and justice. And when things get heavy and dark and evil, they say, not on my watch. That is where we find God. Which, and now we're getting back on track, is where our story goes next. Because to carry out the genocide, the Pharaoh, he decides to go to two women. And their names are Shiphrah and Puah. And we're going to pause there for a moment because we actually get their names. That's huge. And even cooler, Pharaoh is not named. He's just Pharaoh. But the women, Shiphrah and Puah. So that tells you everything you need to know about how these women are held in the Jewish culture and the Jewish faith. And he goes to them, and they are the head midwives of Israel. And he goes to them and says, I want you to kill every baby boy that you help birth. And so Shiphrah and Puah, they go back to all the other midwives, and they tell them what's up. They say, hey guys, this is the order. This is what we're being told to do. But they also say to all the other midwives, and we're not going to do it. We can't get down with that. We cannot comply with this order. So here's what we're going to do instead. We're not just going to say no, because then one of you will simply be promoted and one of you will have to solve the problem. What we're going to do is we're just going to ignore it. And we're going to resist and we're going to protest in literally the most life-giving way we possibly can. And all the other midwives are like, cool, we're in, let's do it. And so years go by, and Pharaoh looks out, and he expects to see the Israelites getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but instead he sees them getting bigger, bigger, and bigger. And so he goes back to Shiphrah and Puah, and he's like, what's up? Why are they growing? And Shiphrah and Puah, this is just so elegant and beautiful and wonderful. We're told they wink at each other, and they say to Pharaoh, oh, you know, these Israelite women's, they're a bunch of chaots. And chaots is a word where in Egyptian it means animal, but in Hebrew it means hero. And so they tell the Pharaoh, oh, they're just a bunch of animals. Wink, wink, wink. And Pharaoh, he replies, yeah, you're right, they are a bunch of animals. We can't stop them from having babies. Never mind, let's stop this plan. And we're told how God then celebrates the work of these women from saving the Israelite people from genocide. And it's a beautiful, powerful, amazing story. And we could stop here, and we could be like, the takeaway of this is, for all of us who are told to go out and change the world, go be like Shiphrah and Puah. Go be like them. Go be like those midwives and resist and protest and give life. That is what you're called to do. And that's true. That would be a good sermon. That would preach. But we'll also then get overwhelmed and we'll start ping-ponging again. And this is where the second question that I want to offer you is. Because I wonder if we can tackle justice. I wonder if a better question that we can begin to ask is, instead of saying, how can I change the world? I wonder if we can ask, how could I join in on what's already happening? I wonder if that's the better question for us to ask. How can I join in on what's already happening? Because to be clear, this is not me giving you, get a jail-free card where you can just like not do anything and just like donate $20 somewhere or post a black square on Instagram. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is how sometimes, and maybe most of the time, it's that being an ally, an advocate, and an accomplice is just as important and just as powerful as being a leader or a starter. Because here's the thing that we often forget in our culture is that, yes, leaders matter. Yes, starters matter. Yes, a person who stands up and speaks up first matters. Yes, yes, yes. But the thing we often forget is that change doesn't happen because of one person. Moments don't turn into movements because one person acts. Change happens, moments become movements only when others join in. That's how real and lasting change happens. That is how we go from, yeah, this is just the way we do things, to, I cannot believe that's how we used to be. And we go from there to there, yes, when one person starts something, but when everyone else says, how can I help? That's when change happens. Transformation only really begins when we become allies, advocates, and accomplices to the people who are already doing the work. Which I know isn't groundbreaking. I know that's kind of duh. But think about it. What would happen if we all got involved in something? What would happen if the 150 people here this morning all found a local initiative and said, hey, how can I help? What would change if we all acted like those midwives? What would happen if we lowered the bar and just joined something? I have to think everything would change. I have to think that influx of time and energy and money and skill set, I have to think it would change everything, and that a lot of people doing small things leads to one really gigantic big thing. And this is why being a joiner matters. This is why being an ally or an advocate or an accomplice isn't a small thing, it's a big thing. But that's not the only reason we should ask this question. The other reason we should ask this question is being a joiner, being someone who steps up and says, how can I help? Doesn't just change that, it's also going to change this. And changing this, that's huge. That's everything. Because when we talk about changing the world, we only tend usually to think about stuff out there, right? We think of what's wrong out there. We think of the environment. We think of racism. We think of sexism. We think of homophobia. We think of nuclear disarmament. We think of all the things that are deeply wrong with the world. And that's good. Think about those things. That's bad stuff. Out there is a mess. But this is what the mystical side of our tradition would teach us. In order to change that, you first have to change this. Because most of the time, if not all the time, all that is out there is made by everything that's in here, right? It's made up of us. It's started by our assumptions, our greed, our prejudices, our anger, our insecurities. Which means that when we talk about justice, we also have to talk about us, because we can't repair what's going on out there if we don't repair what's going on in here. And that's why joining matters. Because when we join something, especially something that's going on longer than we have, especially if it's being run by people who know more than we do, what happens? We learn, we discover, we're challenged, and we have to then deal with all the stuff that goes on in here so we can actually go out and make a difference out there. That's why joining matters. That's why it's important for us to ask, what can I get in on? And because it's such a big deal, this is what we're going to do. We're going to kind of shift into some prayer time. And this time will be for you to move from asking that really big question that we get asked of, like, how can I change the world? And you begin to ask, how can I join in? How can I do my part? Because we know from history, we know from our lives, we know that if we all join in, if we all do one small little thing, if we all join the Friday food program, if we all donate $20, if we all show up and help the property team, if we all go downtown and pick up garbage, if we all go and volunteer at the Women's Center, if we all stand up for people who are being discriminated and bullied, we know that all of that will begin to change, because all of that changes everything. And so Drew's going to come up, and Drew's going to lead us in a prayer time to help us be the kinds of people that God made us to be, people of justice, people who are made to go out and change the world. But we're going to lower the bar. We're going to see what we can join in and how we can come together to be the kinds of people that God made us to be.
Sometime in the 16th century, there was this brilliant human, a mystic, a reformer, writer, poet, Saint Teresa of Avila. In her words, many of her prayers and poems impacted me, especially as we were growing up in the faith. And so before I invite us into a responsive prayer that we will pray together, and then after that, the Lord's Prayer, I'm going to read some words to kind of sort of center us all. This is what she wrote, Saint Teresa. Christ has no body but yours, no hands, no feet on earth, but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks with compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands. Yours are the feet. Yours are the eyes. You are his body. For Christ has no body but yours. Christ has no body now on earth but yours. It's up to us. Love is always in motion. That's the best thing about love. It's never static or stagnant. It's always moving. And so together, let's read this prayer. If you're new here, I'll read the leader section. And then we'll respond together. We gather here to remember that our lives are woven together. What touches one of us touches us all. The joy of one becomes our joy. The suffering of one becomes our concern. The hope of one can become a spark for us all. So we come into this place to be reminded that love is not something that we hold alone. It's something that we carry together. So wake us up, God. Wake us up in the comfort of believing that someone else will do the work. Make us your people, your hands reaching, your feet moving, your hearts open. Where there is injustice, give us courage to speak. Where there's loneliness, give us courage to draw near. Where another person's dignity is diminished, give us courage to say so. And where harm has been done, give us the courage to make things different. May we not wait for someone else to bring the change. May we remember the work begins with us. Because love is not merely what we feel, love is what we practice. It is what we build with our hands. It's where we choose to stand. It's how we choose to stand beside one another. Make our love bold. Make our compassion courageous. Make our faith impossible to separate from the way we live. Christ has no hands but ours, no feet but ours, no voice but ours. And the world is still waiting for that love to be born again in us, through us, among us. Spirit, send us, not as spectators, but as neighbors, not as rescuers, but as companions, not seeking power over others, but working together for the good of all. Send us into the conversations we would rather avoid. Ugh. Send us into the work that will not make us comfortable, but might make our communities whole. Wherever we go this week, may we notice what needs tending. May we listen for the voices too easily ignored. May we choose compassion over indifference, courage over comfort, justice over apathy. God of love and justice, take our hearts out into the streets. Take our faith out of the sanctuary. Take our love beyond words. Form us into people who do more than believe in love. Make us people who embody it. Make our hands serve, our feet move, our voices speak, until our lives become an expression of Christ's love in the world. Make us brave enough to tell the truth, tender enough to stay, and fierce enough to believe that another world is possible. And then give us courage to help build it. Amen. And if you are able, I invite you to stand with me and let's pray the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thanks, Drew. So the invitation remains. How can you get involved? How can you help change the world? How can you do your part?